Okay, so my video before, when I showed my Techno build, my noob Techno build I was using before New Horizons update, before I got to max level on my Techno and made my, my blighted rounds and my triple turret build in my main videos, it reminded me of what I really was doing on a Techno before I did those, because if you remember New Horizons updates, they made the Quartermaster mod for the fixing wave a lot better. Before then, it sucked because it had a 45-second cooldown, so it was totally useless. Now, of course, it pretty much activates every time you use fixing wave, so every time you use it, you refill yours and everyone else's clip. And that led me to wanting to change my build into eventually that infinite blighted rounds dude you see. But this build is almost identical to it. All I really did to it was I got rid of my turrets, you see, for blighted rounds, and basically used Quartermaster, which I wasn't using before, and then bonus toxic damage mods. But this dude, I'm revisiting him and I'm realizing this guy is so much better than I remember again. I mean, he was really good back. I remember he was good, but I'm realizing he actually is just as good as those other two builds. Mainly because before then I actually wasn't using Moaning Winds on him, for one, and two, Quartermaster helps this dude too. You see, I'm actually using it on this dude just like I use it on my triple turret dude, because being able to not have to reload is a huge benefit to both damage and tanking, since most of my damage just comes from my mods and my guns activating constantly and getting boosted by the freeze. So it's like not having to reload is still nice, and I'm still helping my allies more with keeping that buff. But now what I add on this dude is I was using that fixing wave mod before, where I give everyone 100% more armor and 30% resistance for 5 seconds. And with a 9-second cooldown on fixing wave, I, factoring in getting staggered sometimes, I mean, that's still like roughly half the time though that I'm keeping that buff on myself and everybody else. And it's a huge, buff. And then I'm doing the healing regeneration buff with it too, and I'm refilling everyone's clip, and I'm of course healing them. So I just realized this is actually really good, because then I can slap both my turrets on, just get the two best mods, which is the damage one mainly so that they heal me off skill leech, and then the two turrets, of course, to have two of them. And this also really maxes freeze completely at this point, because now I have max status power cold snap, and I have two cryo turrets. Now if you're wondering, I did try this using triple turrets, using blighted freeze turret too, but obviously to do that I have to get rid of fixing wave, and I realized this is not worth it, because before it was still worth it, because I can have so many more mods on fixing wave for team buffing, and having two, I mean, the cryo turrets are better than the blighted turret for sure. Also, because Cold Snap is so OP, half the time my blighted freeze turret wasn't even hitting anything, because it was constantly frozen before it would get there. So yeah, this that you see, I think, might actually be the best support Techno build I think I've ever made, and I can't believe I kind of got rid of it in favor for the blighted round dude before. Because honestly, this dude's damage is almost just as good, and I realize why. It's because I'm using the exact same thing my triple turret dude does, but the cold snap, basically with the max status power, means that I'm getting the bonus damage off freeze almost all the time, whereas half the time I wasn't on him, because I just had to rely on my turrets and melee for inflicting freeze. So yeah, this dude, he clears this in 8.5 minutes, which honestly for my builds is very, very good. Like, I'm pretty sure that's almost as fast as my blighted round dude does anyway. So like, I lost the toxic bonus damage, true, but then I gained Moaning Winds, essentially on my secondary. So I mean, and then I gained my two turrets back again, which at least do some damage. They actually do about 8% of all my damage at the end of this, so it's not bad at least. And again, they just add to the freeze. They really help freeze these birds, for instance, a lot better than Cold Snap does. So yeah, this dude, like, I freeze everything. Like, my freeze is just as good as my blighted round, dude. It's just cold snap, max status power, you know, is insane. But I also get 2 cryo turrets to help with that as well. And I still get to use Fixing Wave, and I have another buff on Fixing Wave where I buff everyone's arm and resistance too. And then if you factor in the PAX tree nodes that are coming, they're gonna increase the healing, you know, when you're near someone's turrets. Having Fixing Wave means that I can still strategically put my 2 turrets in certain spots and leave them there when I want to as well. So yeah, this is... I have to say, I can't believe I stopped doing this build, because this is actually an amazing build. I can't believe I forgot about this. Like, dude, what was I know why. It's because when New Horizon dropped, I was trying to avoid... I thought Moaning Winds was too overpowered, because it was back then when you could use it on all 3 of your weapons. So I was deliberately not using that. And I remember I was not even using it as my secondary in this, dude. But after New Horizons, they buffed the damage on Moaning Winds. But when they made Quartermaster give you essentially infinite ammo, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do blighted rounds then, that sounds cool. But I've totally forgot, it's like, well, actually, this dude's damage got buffed too, so it's not really much of a difference, because I just used Moaning Winds, and then Claymore Torrent got buffed, and like, I keep Freeze on it even better for the Freeze bonus damage, even though I lost the Toxic damage, so... Yeah, this dude... Well, I can't believe I forgot about this man again. But this is, I think this might actually be the perfect Techno support tank. I think it's better than my other 2, because it basically perfectly combines the best of both of those builds. It's so ironic, when after New Horizons, I made this build split into those 2 essentially. But in reality, it already had the best of both of them. I don't have, you know, the 3 turrets, but I still got 2 turrets. And again, the cryo turrets are hands down better than the blighted turrets. So if you're gonna pick any of them, pick the cryo ones. They do more damage, and they keep freeze on better at longer ranges too. So I got the 2 turrets still. Get to keep my 2 turrets. Still have Fixing Wave, and still have max cold snap. And if you pay attention to my skill tree, so my skill tree, I realized it wasn't worth getting max resistance going in the bottom tree, and in any event, Fixing Wave now already gives me a resistance buff in addition to my resistance buff in the skill tree. So I just got the 2 skill leech nodes. So that way, since I have status power on all my gear again, so I didn't have any bonus skill leech. So doing that and using a weapon leech gun, if you saw my stats, I now have, you know, I still have a 30% skill leech healing off this dude, and a 38% weapon leech healing with Death Chain. So combine that with still, you know, base 130 armor and base 30% resistance, but then combine it with Fixing Wave healing me, and then Fixing Wave giving me a health regeneration buff, and then combining it with it also now giving me a armor and resistance buff for at least half the time. And it's really good. And I buff my team like crazy now. I freeze like crazy now. With the turrets. And when World Slayer drops, my turrets are gonna be, my turrets and my own damage will then be healing everybody too. So it is super support, I think. So yeah, I had to make this video and comments about that. And again, like with the Techno, I always just find I do the middle tree, because the top tree is just for damage and the bottom tree just sucks. So if you ever wonder, that's why, like, my Technos are all kind of straightforward, just middle trees with minor tweaks to all 3 of them. But yeah, it's definitely the best tree if you're looking to be a tank on a Techno.
Zahidi, I found a pod down here guarded by monsters. If you're